What's going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to rant and rave about the Orville, specifically episode 4 of season 2, an episode called Nothing Left on Earth Except in Fishes. From what I've seen online the last week, there doesn't appear to be any major news related to the show apart from just the overall Orville community being in a state of mourning over the departure of Halston Sage from the show. That said, starting tonight, we do have the privilege of watching the competition between the Orville and Star Trek heat up considerably with the Season 2 premiere of Star Trek Discovery. That episode went live about a half hour before the Orville on CBS All Access, and I'll be getting back to it as soon as I'm finished with this review. I did briefly consider combining my reviews, but I very quickly realized that I just want to keep my Orville reviews separate and focus primarily on this world that they have so successfully created. That said, just for fun to mess with CBS, I think Fox should bump up the Orville showtime to 8 p.m. Eastern. I know that Gotham plays during that time, but I don't watch Gotham, so. But getting back to tonight's episode, as far as I'm concerned, this season so far, it's 4 for 4. I thought tonight's episode absolutely kicked ass. It featured two main storylines, the first being Ed's love affair with Janelle Tyler, which goes into very unexpected territory, while the second follows Gordon Malloy's perhaps misguided efforts to climb the ranks toward command through the shipmaster qualification program. But let's focus on Gordon's story first, since his is the secondary plotline, and basically after blundering through most of the psychological evaluations, as well as face-offs with the Krill in the simulator, Kelly basically calls him out on trying to gain a higher rank in order to pick up chicks. To be fair, Malloy is simply wondering whether or not he has anything else to offer other than just being a badass pilot, but as he'll learn toward the end of the episode, sometimes that's enough. But the big story here is Ed's love affair with Janelle Tyler. They've been watching classic movies together like Taxi Driver and The King and I, which is, by the way, where the title of this episode comes from. I was an extra playing 3 non-existent roles in that musical back in high school, so I have some affection for it as well. But when the two of them decide to go on a trip together, that's where we see the trap that Ed has fallen into. In spite of being cloaked, 3 Krill ships find them easily. And once taken prisoner, the Krill begin torturing Janelle until Ed is forced to give up his command codes. However, he soon learns that Janelle was simply a disguise for Talea, who Orville fans will remember from episode 6 in season 1, one of the best episodes of the first season. Personally, I love the fact that the show now has its own established continuity. Having these deep plot lines and this additional lore just gives the show its own identity, and the more of these stories that we see, the less frequently people will compare the Orville to Star Trek. That said, I do anticipate some STD loyalists claiming that this idea was stolen from the character of Ash Tyler in Season 1 of Discovery. Whether or not Seth MacFarlane had this story planned all along back in Season 1, I honestly can't say. However, the fact that both characters have the last name Tyler, I think is going to make the comparison all the more inevitable. So I predict there'll be a little bit of friction between the Orville and Star Trek communities on that particular front. But quick side note, am I the only one who finds Michaela McManus attractive as a Krill? I mean, obviously she was completely lovely as Janelle Tyler, but maybe it's her voice, but I couldn't deny that she still has something even when looking like a light-sensitive vampiric alien. In any event, the Krill ship gets destroyed by a species even more psycho than the Krill are, leading to Ed and Talea escaping in a pod and getting marooned on this planet as they look for high enough elevation to call for help. So with bad guys on their tail, as well as with a day that lasts 23 regular Earth days on that planet, the odds are definitely against them. But as they take refuge in a cave, we get this great exchange between them. First of all, Talea admits that she did enjoy Raiders of the Lost Ark, in particular its hero, Belloc. I think even Indy would crack up at that. But Ed also brings up an interesting point about the Krill's religious fanaticism, which he says is an unfortunate path that many species take when they first learn that they're not alone in the universe. And whether Talea likes it or not, she does have to trust Ed in the short term as he goes up to high elevation during sunlight in order to send out a distress call. Luckily, the message is received by the Orville. They haul ass, and Bortus and Malloy go down in a shuttle and arrive in the nick of time during a pitched battle where Malloy gets to show off his badass piloting skills and save the day. Malloy might just be a badass pilot, but as we see, that can be a very useful thing in a tight spot. But what's interesting is how back on the Orville, Ed shocks everyone and basically risks a potential court-martial by agreeing to hand Talea back over to her people. And it leads to what I think is one of the most heartwarming scenes this whole season, where basically tells her, look, the Union and the Krill can keep fighting, or we can talk. But in the meantime, he gives her the best of Billy Joel as a memento and tells her that in the meantime, he's available for movie night anytime she gets the itch. Something tells me that is a deep tease for an episode either later this season or in season 3 where they will reunite for movie night. Because there was this great little detail earlier in the cave where she told him to sleep on his side, not on his back, because he snores when he sleeps on his back. So obviously they spent the night together, which answers Malloy's question from the beginning of the episode. But as they go their separate ways, we hear Billy Joel's "She's Always a Woman." And honestly, I think it was a moment wasn't worthy of some of James Gunn's work with the Guardians of the Galaxy, in that James Gunn has been fired from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, unfairly, but that's a topic for another video. Perhaps the Orville can take over the role of being the best sci-fi franchise to feature Earth's pop music. So far, the show is doing an excellent job on that front. But I think that's all I have for now. I'm itching to finish the Season 2 premiere of Star Trek Discovery so I can do a proper compare and contrast. And that video most likely will be up first thing tomorrow. But if you like this review and recap, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would really appreciate it. If you want to talk about Star Trek or the Orville or James Gunn or whatever, you can always find me on Twitter at Colbrax, and there's a link to that in the video notes below. But can't thank you enough for watching my video. Really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.